Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. On assignment here in Geneva, Illinois. Such an honor to be joined by a cat who goes deep into the lineage of the indigenous rhythms of the motherland and all the diaspora, and he has done his best over the last half century, 60 years, to bring that knowledge to other cats through live performances, through studies, also through the written word, and just trying to make people feel good and willing to share the knowledge. Philip Royster, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hello, Jake. Thank you for inviting me.
It's an honor. I just wanted to kind of get a snapshot. As a professor, you were at SUNY Albany, and then at Syracuse, and then at Kansas State. And even though you were a professor, correct me if I'm wrong, literature, okay? What was your view of how percussion specifically started to become less meaningful even within our culture from the mid 70s? I think you were in Manhattan in 84, if I saw one of those pictures correctly. I'm just talking about the significance of rhythm and how, even at the educational level, at the academic level, if you felt like you saw that sort of shrink over time.
Well, actually, no, I would probably say just the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, I would say that part of the significance of transforming the university academic culture was that we enabled our classes and our colleagues to understand the significance of music and its relationship to the overall culture, its relationship to art, its relationship to literature, its relationship to dance. And I think that now, among academics and intellectuals, everyone is a lot more sophisticated about the relationship of both music, rhythm, and the traditional cultures and religions that came from. Whereas when I started drumming in the 50s, there would be very little knowledge on university campuses of the relationship between African American music traditions. Maybe there might have been some at Northwestern. Because
this is what I'm thinking. I'm just thinking about potato. Where what I'm saying is, how does rhythm change when it gets into the academy, as opposed to because we're talking about in our first interview, whether it was Mongo or Potato or, the list goes on and on. This was street learning. So you were learning the language directly from the source. And so how does rhythm change how do you believe rhythm changes when it gets into the academy?
Well, first of all, rhythm always changes. The music always changes.
The earth is always moving. I get it, yeah.
And one of the major things that happen in the academy is that the classical or concert musicians and composers begin to adapt more of the rhythmical patterns into mainstream concert music. Okay, so if you listen to some of the composers, it's extremely rhythmical.
Sure.
They began to appreciate the rhythms of Stravinsky more. They knew he was quite influenced by jazz. Okay, but his rhythmic complexity became better understood. So yeah, I would say generally speaking, the rhythms become more adapted. They're adopted and adapted into the languages and performance styles of major composers of the late last half of the 20th century and certainly now in the 21st century.
You talk a little bit about. It's a beautiful answer. I'm coming at it from the idea of rhythm as therapy. You had Sunday jam sessions, and clearly in a concert form where people are sitting in a very Eurocentric style, clapping whether they like the music or not. I'm talking about the inner urge, the idea of, well, I just remember Jimmy Owens, I guess, or Jimmy Heath told me that, like, when he was growing up on TV, the only sort of interpretation of an African was Tarzan, very barbaric, swinging from tree to tree. And then he goes on one of these State Department trips and he's playing into a full stadium in Africa. And the people are as quiet as can be. So genteel and into the spiritual healing qualities of rhythm. Was that still something, is that something that can be integrated into a codified, I mean, again, you're a decorated writer and someone who deals with language and helps me deal with my butchered language, but what about how, to me, there were drum circles in Syria. I don't think those drum circles exist anymore. And I'm just saying, where are we at in terms of the spiritual healing qualities of the drum?
Well, the notions have really spread out into many other areas.
Like what?
Okay, like there's a whole physical therapy.
That's right.
Whole area of physical therapy that applies music, and rhythm is a major part of that. Okay, so you can go to college now and study physical therapy and the relationship between music and physical therapy and healing. A friend of mine named Bob Gluck.
Great cat. I've interviewed him. Great writer.
Bob was one of my students at SUNY Albany. Wow. Okay, he's also a rabbi.
Great piano player.
Yeah, and he's retired now from SUNY Albany.
Right.
Well, his wife is a therapist. Okay, she uses dance, which is based upon rhythm. She uses dance as her major mode. So I would say the whole notion that of music as therapeutic has really entered into mainstream American culture, especially the culture of those who have been, trained for medical and physical therapy purposes. And that's based upon rhythm. So, I would say it's been extremely influential, okay? I would say Jimmy Heath's experiences, it was Jimmy Heath.
Yeah,
Heath
Jimmy
brothers.
Owens, both of them, really. I mean, they both were stunned with the interpretation versus, more to the point, maybe the better question, I remember Ray Mantia. I'm not sure if you ever crossed paths with him.
But I know of him.
Okay, so when he called himself a New Yorican, New York, Puerto Rican. I mean, there were Conga drums everywhere. And I'm not into a nostalgia bag here, but talk about when you saw the drums disappearing from the neighborhoods, especially among, the Latino and the African communities.
Well, in terms of what happened in the neighborhood, my experience is that the drums didn't disappear. Okay. I think you can still go out on 64th Street and hear drummers. Okay. I don't know about other communities, so that's my experience is that I've really disappeared from those drum circles.
Absolutely.
So I don't play in the same way I did, but I have a friend now who lives over on the south side of Chicago, and I just brought him back I didn't bring him back. We found a drum maker in Brazil that made him, while I was there, who made him 3 drums, okay? And so I think the drum is still alive and very, very vital.
Even though you've been removed, how has technology affected rhythm in terms of you don't see younger cats? I mean, when Cyril Neville in the early 70s was in Brooklyn, there were dozens and hundreds of people showing up for a Sunday, and it would be all day long. And so those cats today, they're sitting playing video games. They're on their phones.
Okay.
So in your mind, rhythm is always changing. But how would you talk about what electronic rhythm, quantized rhythm has done to the ability for vocabulary to grow in music? You listen back to, Ron C., Tony, Philly Joe, Jimmy Garrison. Those guys could set they could help create new musical vocabulary because they have heartbeats. They're humans. So I just, maybe on a general level, how has rhythm, how has quantized rhythm hindered the ability for vocabulary and music to grow because of the over reliance on it, because we have all this technology, even though you could still say we don't have to use it, people do.
Well, I don't think it's interfered with the area that I play in for sure. What has happened, as a matter of fact, is some very influential drummers, one from Cuba and one from Puerto Rico, have really transformed American drumming, okay, conga drumming and percussion in general. One guy's named Changuito, okay, who's from Cuba, and the other is, these drums are named after Giovanni Hidalgo.
Okay,
This
yeah.
is a set of Giovanni
Hidalgo,
okay?
yeah.
And what they've done is that they've taken the techniques that stick drummers used, okay, mama, daddy, paradiddles, etc., and they've applied them to the conga drum, okay? And essentially they've changed the whole, there's been a revolution from the 50s when I started playing till now. There was, that revolution started probably back in the late 70s and the 80s. And now drumming is there's a lot more speed, a lot more technique in it. And it's beautiful what's going on. The only issue I have is the issue of expression. You know, sometimes people want to play lots of notes,
Right.
but playing lots of notes is one thing. You know, reaching transcendence, you know, is another. And the drum is primarily a tool for reaching transcendence. You know, healing, that's an aspect of the drum, but it's the real nature of the drum is it's an instrument to produce transcendence in general for anyone who lends themselves to the as music does in general. And that capacity sometimes people lose because they become technically proficient, okay, but they're not interested in reaching transcendence through the music. That would be the issue that I'm concerned with.
I think you just nailed it, and as a decorated scholar, I'm not surprised. Let's talk about people expression unable to tap into playing not just from the heart, but what I would call the primordial gut. The idea of, yeah, you can play all the right notes, but does it feel good? Is it coming from the authentic place? What are the levels of consciousness? How it's more than just playing from the heart. So I just want you to talk about the drum as a transcendent instrument.
Yeah, what I would say is that for my own particular relationship to the drum has been the means for me to understand the world of the divine, okay, and to live in that world. That's the major aspect of the drum. So when I sit down to play, I really sit down to join another world that is not part of our everyday consciousness. Okay, there are a lot of different names for it, and so I don't prefer one set of names or one approach over another. But I do know it is a world that is transcendent, because as I live in it and experience it, I experience this transcendence, and to me that's the most important part of the drum. When you lose that, the drum just becomes a means of entertainment. Okay, part of the way the drum did that is that people danced, okay, as well as, and great drummers are not just drumming on the drums; they're dancing on the drums. Okay, so it's the relationship between drums and the rhythms, you know, and the sounds that come from the drum and the way those sounds enter your body and enter your consciousness. If you're a performer, a drummer like I am, then you're really dancing at the same time. You're moving in a certain patterns, okay? And all of that helps to overcome the everyday consciousness and enter into these altered states of consciousness. And they're wonderful because you don't need any drugs, and you don't need any sermons, okay? All you need to do is be there with these rhythms.
like you told me in our first interview, Lionel Hampton played drums for Louis. And someone said, what was it like? And he said, it was like being in heaven every time.
Right.
Now, is there a way for you to describe what it's like to be in unity with the divine? Is it merely almost like you're like a vessel, like you're empty in the best possible way where information can just flow through you because you've surrendered to it? Or how would you describe the metaphysical qualities of being connected to the divine in the best case of drumming?
Well, yeah, I think that is what happens. But here's what I would say about it. First of all, because of the here and now, that reality, okay, because of the reality of time and space, each time it happens is different.
Right.
Because each time is different, okay? So you don't repeat the same thing over and over again, all right? So every transcendent experience that I've had has been different, okay? The experiences are much like being an instrument yourself and allowing reality to play through you.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, that's what it's like. For instance, there was a singer I worked with in Nashville named Joyce. I'll think of her last name in a minute. But when she sang, all I had to do was put my hands over my drums. Okay, I didn't have to think. I didn't have to decide what to do. I just listened to her. And when I listened to her, my hands knew what to do. Okay? She just had that quality of singing that immediately puts you in a transcendent state. If you listen to her, at least it did me. I really enjoyed working with her. So yes, you become like an instrument, but the challenge for any is that the experience is quite consuming. You know, for instance, often when I'm in the experience, my body is vibrating. Okay. Often I'll be laughing and crying at the same time. Okay, I'm playing. Okay, I rise above. My consciousness rises above, and I'm watching myself do this stuff. Okay, there's experience of joy beyond measure.
Unquantifiable joy.
Yeah,
Yes.
unquantifiable
I get
joy. Okay, ecstatic joy.
it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that ecstatic joy, okay, tells you that you are in a place among the divine, okay, because and people, you know, I've described this to some people and it disturbs them, and they say, "Oh no," it disturbed my mother, for example.
I'm talking about, no, I mean, how about somebody that outside of your mom? She's kind of a unique case.
Yeah.
But why are people disturbed by that?
Because they have a notion of the divine or God that they don't think this fits into, okay? And they didn't grow up in a culture where they were able to associate the experiences that transformed them with religious experiences.
Very well said.
Okay? So, but I was able to associate the two. Anything that made me feel that good, I knew it really reflected everything I knew about religious experiences. Okay?
That's right.
And so no one was ever able to fool me into thinking, oh, this is something else, rather than you're having a relationship with God.
Did this start in the park with the bongos when your mom could still hear you and she had to shut the window? Or did this happen maybe a little bit later on?
This happened during that time period, but it happened actually in a basement on the south side, the first time it happened. I'm probably about 15 years old. I'm with a number of other drummers, okay? And we're in this guy's basement playing. There are a bunch of grown men playing cards and drinking beer.
Smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, smoking cigarettes at a card table while the drummers are over in another corner drumming, okay? At a certain point, the drumming got so good to the guys at the card table, they stopped playing cards and came over and surrounded us as we were playing. And one guy took out his keys to his car and started tapping on the bottle, a bottle of beer, okay, an empty beer bottle, okay, giving us a bell sound, okay. And all of a sudden, and I'm listening to all of this while I'm playing, okay, and I'm just appreciating it. And then all of a sudden, no longer am I in control of my hands, okay, and my hands are playing rhythms that I really didn't know. Okay, I never practiced these rhythms. Okay, they're playing patterns. Okay, and I'm the lead drummer. And I'm playing solo patterns. Okay, but they're patterns that I really didn't know and weren't under my knowledge or control. All right, that was the first, and I'm happy as I can be.
Right, ecstatic joy.
Right,
and
now,
you're playing stuff you don't know how you're playing.
I don't know how to play. Now, actually, I saw this. I grew up looking at this, but I didn't know what it was. I grew up looking at this in the Baptist church, where people, what we said, got happy, okay? And that is, they would get the Holy Spirit and they would shout and cry and they would...
It's like me at a concert right now, yeah. Right. Out of body experience, right. Yeah, that's it.
Okay? But as a kid, as a kid, I didn't understand it,
right.
Okay? My great-grandmother told me two things. She said, first of all, this is people experiencing the Holy Spirit, which I didn't kind of know what that meant because I was 5 or 6 years old. And she said, don't worry, you'll come to understand it.
That's right. Wise, wise, wise woman. Mm-hmm. One thing that I was not hip to, and I really want you to talk about, it's so beautiful that you were family with the legendary producer and arranger and obviously bop pianist Charles Stepney. And so he made his name at chess, but I want you to talk about a memorable experience playing with Maurice White at Chess Records. That to me was revelatory, where not just coming and seeing Charles, but actually playing on sessions with Maurice White. Break it down.
Well, yeah, Maurice and I were playing. Maurice was a studio drummer for chess.
Absolutely.
And I came in to play with a particular group. I forgot which group I was playing.
See, we need that group name. Yeah.
And so after the set, Maurice said, "Phil, I want you to join a group that I'm getting ready to form." I said, "Tell me more about it, Maurice." So he said, "Well, you know, Fifth Dimensions. I really like what they're doing, and I want to do something like what Fifth Dimension does. Okay, I want to play like this spiritual kind of music to expand your mind, expand your head. Okay, it's going to be based on Black traditional music, but it's going to be spiritual." I said, "Maurice," I said, "it sounds great, but I'm in school.
Right.
All right, I can't go out on the road with you." Okay. Well, about a year or two after that,
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
We formed the Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Of course, it was. I believe Ramsey told me it was originally called the Salty Peppers. But what? Tell me a little bit about. Was that your first recording date? Were those days at Chess?
Well, it was one of the early recording dates. I did a number of recordings, a couple of them, 2 or 3 at Chess, and I'm not sure whether that was the first one or a second one.
Now, I'm curious about, more to the point, I'd love you to talk about, part of my show is about making sure that certain spirits, their legacy goes on. And I just wanted you to talk about the legacy of a guy who died way too young, was Charles Stepney.
Yes, well, Charles was very important in my own particular life because he's the person that introduced me to bebop. When I'm 3 or 4 years old, I'm living in the same house that he lived in our larger extended family.
Right.
Okay, and Charles loved Bud Powell. Okay, and Charles was a pianist. Okay. And at the same time, he was also getting into vibes, okay? So he was listening to Milt Jackson and Lionel Hampton and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think he was very influential in terms of being a person who loved music and who we shared music together. I'd go to his rehearsals, and he'd rehearse with groups down in his basement where he played. And it was good being around him, okay? He also took me to the studio, to Chess Studios. He's probably the first one that took me there. and he was working with Rotary Connection.
Sure.
Minnie Riperton.
Minnie Riperton.
And writing for her, and he'd write certain, like he was working on their album. Their I don't know if it was their first album, but it's the album that's called Rotary Connection. And he would do an arrangement. Then he called me and asked me to come over and hear it. He said, "Look what I did here." You know how, for example, most songs faded out, but on Rotary Connection, he faded in. So he's the first one to do a fade in.
A fade in.
Fade in, yeah. And he was big on that. He said, "Phil, listen to this." So yeah, he would share his techniques because he loved arranging, okay, and he loved scoring, which he was trained to do and did well.
His first love was being a jazzer. He wanted to be a jazzer.
Oh, there's no question. Okay, his first love was bebop, but he had to make money. Okay,
Right.
Because he got married while he was in college, and he met the woman he married, Ruby, while he was in college. But also he wanted, to prove himself to a very skeptical family. His parents did not approve of his playing jazz. His mother was a great pianist and organist who played in our church and played in other churches around the south side of Chicago. And his two cousins, Orly and Bledsoe and Yancey Bledsoe, also played with her. So he was among a group of extremely competent keyboardists, okay, who played both organ and the Hammond B3 organ and piano. So coming up and he played in church at times, okay, but what he really loved, of course, was jazz.
Bud Powell.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, he loved bebop.
I mean, clearly you had people that showed you unconditional love in your life and taught you to think for yourself.
Yes.
If you feel like there was one sort of thing that being mentally strong or whatever, what rubbed off on you from his own experience? Basically, like, regardless of whether he made quote unquote commercial music to make a living,
Mm-hmm.
he was still pursuing music that his family basically almost disowned him for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just curious about, what you took away from him from just more, nothing musically, almost just from a mental toughness point of view.
Well, I loved his drive and commitment, okay,
Yeah.
to the music. But my heart went out to him because I wanted him to be easier on himself. He was driven, I think, to overwork himself and not get enough rest and relaxation and stuff and take care of his health. And I think what primarily drove him was trying to prove to his skeptical parents and who were disturbed by the kind of music he was playing. They later on, of course, became fans of his once he could support them and, buy a place for them to live, etc. So, they later became part of his fan. But by that time, he had done the kinds of damage. He had, I think, 2 or 3 heart attacks, and it was the 3rd heart attack that killed him. So, and he was 40-something years old. Okay, that was much too soon. He was about 45 years old.
I mean, that's incredibly young. It'd be amazing to see what his legacy would have been, or even grown, if he had been around longer.
Right.
You have 4 daughters. I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any grandkids, have any have shown the aptitude for these Hidalgo? Do you feel like clearly you've passed on so many beautiful sort of ethics to your family, to your children,
Mm-hmm.
but do you see a lineage in rhythm with any of your grandkids or anybody within your family that it will carry on? I mean, your passion for, even though you didn't make your living doing it,
Mm-hmm.
your passion for rhythm is unmistakable.
Well, I would say that my oldest daughter has some of the finest touch that I've ever seen. When she hits the drum, it's a beautiful thing to watch.
Right.
Yes, her name is Rebecca, And Rebecca has this, and I'd spent some time um, training Rebecca with regards to the drum, along with other children that were in the neighborhood. So we would have little groups of kids that I taught rhythms.
Sure.
And so I would say, yes, she has a most enviable touch. I wish I had the touch that she has. A second daughter, Francesca, has been, I think, very influenced by my musical background. She's working on a book on Black music now. She just finished a book on Black country music, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
That just got published, and she just won a big award for it.
Wow. What's the name of the book?
Black Country Music.
That's fantastic.
By Francesca Royster. Okay. So she's been very influenced, and she plays a number of instruments. She plays bass, which is, of course, a kind of percussion instrument. As
Plays
well as
bass
strings.
fiddle or electric?
Both. Okay.
She plays upright too.
But she's got upright, and yeah, she plays banjo also.
Yep.
So yeah, she's quite talented musically, and
Well, you already answered the question. I mean, it's already being passed down in different ways.
yeah,
They're not out there in the park in Syracuse per se, but they have it deep in their veins, and they're trying to express it in their own way, and they clearly have that touch. Before I let you go, it warmed my heart. I've only seen his records. I never met him in person. I'd love you to talk about how you connected originally with Cassie Gardner.
Well, when I went to Fisk to teach in 1970, I soon decided that I needed to do something with my evenings. So
That's in Nashville, by the way? Is that where it is?
Yeah, Nashville, right. So I went to put my drums on my back and went out and found a club, found a group that I started playing with there. And
Exit In? Or was that
no, that was before Exit In.
Okay.
The first group I played with was a group at the Black Diamond Club. Wow. It was a club called the Black Diamond. And Cassie played in there sometimes, okay? And so I met Cassie through playing in one of those groups on the black side of Nashville. And so yeah, that's how I met him. We started playing. Cassie, of course, was a genius of an organ player, and for some reason, he liked my drumming, and he asked me to play with him.
You guys eventually were opening for people like B.B. King and stuff.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
How did you find a way to fit inside the organ lines as a percussionist?
Well, that's a major aspect of organ jazz, the conga drum. Okay, so there are a number of folks. So there's a long tradition of conga drummers playing with jazz trios, organ trios.
Absolutely.
And so I had listened to that, okay, and I wanted to make a contribution to that, to make my own.
Who were some of the organ trio? Like Ray Barretto, or maybe who else? Who played percussion in some of the organ jazz that you came up on?
I don't really remember. Who did.
Because you're right. I mean, you look at Jimmy McGriff albums or Richard Groove Holmes albums. Mm-hmm. There's always percussionists on those. Mm-hmm. So that's a big part of the organ jazz tradition.
Right.
So. You wanted to be part of that?
I wanted to contribute to that. I wanted to make a certain statement. And Cassie was an excellent person to do that with, because he had an excellent sense of rhythm. So I didn't have to worry about, I'm there to keep the rhythm.
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
I'm there to play the congas. Okay. And to play inside those rhythms. And he often used drummers. He mostly used kit drummers also. So the kit drummers would handle their end of the job, and I could play those songs on the congas in between.
Dr. Royster, how do you feel about you said you're basically giving your entire archives to the library.
Yeah, University of Illinois.
University of Illinois.
Chicago.
I mean, like, can you just talk about, as you sort of move into this next chapter of your life, you know, the idea that even though we're sitting here looking at pictures and you can't really keep anything, and so pass it on. Can you just talk about that vibe and sort of, what this means, just sort of making sure that your legacy and what you've done lives on, and the fact is that you don't want to leave this to the next life without doing that.
Yes, well, my wife and I wrote a biography of her father, who was a world famous church leader, and in preparation for that, we persuaded him to contribute his library to the University of Illinois at Chicago, to their special collections. So we did that starting back in 1994. Okay, we finished the biography based upon that collection. He has some more papers that came to light after he died that were also that have been in our library that we're going to contribute. But we have our own papers that we're contributing to the library. And yes, the significance of that is those papers record our lives, and good librarians want to know about the lives of people. They want to probably know about most people's lives and they've decided that we're some of the people who they're interested in. So they've decided to accept our papers. Among them will be manuscripts, correspondence, letters, memorabilia.
Just primary source stuff.
Yeah. Photographs. I have lots and lots and lots of tapes of music. Generally, whenever I played, I recorded it so I could study what I was doing and play better the next time. So I have lots and lots of tapes when I recorded with groups. They'll go into that library. And then I have a lot of work that I produced as a curator while I was director of the African American Cultural Center at University of Illinois at Chicago. So a lot of that material will go into the library. And I think it is important. As you say, we can't really keep anything. And I don't want the things to be thrown away. Many people don't understand the significance of papers and the fact that archaeologists, they can go to the garbage heaps of other cultures and learn more than we can with our eyes open reading a book. Papers that record what people accomplished in their lives and tell the story of what their lives are like are very, very important.
Philip Royster, I just want to thank you so much for hosting me today, and it means more than you know, and I will carry on your vibe and spirit into my continued travels here in Chicago and onward, man. Thank you for being part of the program.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to share time with you and to talk about these things.
Big shout out to Tim Pleasant as well, my brother. All right?
I'll tell Tim you were here and we had a good time talking.
Please, this is the Jake Feinberg Show, and we will see you later.